You have it. What you got yesterday, you have the text for today too. Okay? Okay, we are on page... we're on page 199. The first line, the last four words, Uma shehem beli mispar. So, what the author is the Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, known as the Rebbe Rayatz of Lubavitch, the sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe. We're learning the Maamar Vkibel Yehudim that he said in 1927 in Moscow. So, and we're middle of the 8th chapter. In this chapter, the Rebbe had said already in the previous chapter that when we talk about the soul that's invested in the body, that animates the body, there's a difference between the head, the body, and the feet. Basically, the head is the intellect, the mind, the body are the emotions, the feelings, and the feet are action. If you talk about the aspect of God that transcends, that's greater than being invested in the body, it's your soul as your soul is on high. It's your soul as the soul is what we call a makor, a source. Over there, he explained that the divisions of head, body, and feet don't apply. Okay, that's what he said in the previous chapter. Here, he continues the thought, and he questions his own words about the soul that does invest itself and animate the body. He says, we see that it says they're ein mispar, they're infinite. In English we use the word sometimes ad infinitum. In other words, they're beli gvul. So how could you tell me that they're compartmentalized and divided and limited? So to this, the Rebbe's retort, his response to this is that nevertheless, we have what's called the three worlds of the world of Bria, which is creation, the world of Yitzirah, which is the world of formation, and Asiya is the world of action. And he explained that the Zohar, the Holy Zohar, says that Bina, Ema Ilah, this is the last words on page 198, Ima Ilah, the supernal mother, the holy mother, which is the emanation, the sphera called Bina, understanding, development, just like a mother carries a baby for 9 months, it's a development period. Where is its abode? Where does it rest? It rests Mekanano Bekursaya. It rests in the throne. A throne is demonstrative. It symbolizes to be settled. You sit, you're relaxed. You're standing, you're kind of not relaxed in comparison to sitting. So where does Bina find its place? In the throne, which is Bria, the world of creation. Because over there, the world, the concept of a universe, a world, begins to take form. The idea has been accepted. It's not yet developed fully, but it's accepted. Then he says, Shit Svirin, the next few words on the first line on 199, the six other emanations known as Sfirot, Sfiron, they are in Yetzirah. They're in the place of emotions, which is the world of formation. Okay? Because the world of formation already, it starts forming itself. So it's not just a germ, an idea. And it's not just the development of an idea in its early stages. But it's already the process of taking various forms such as kindness, judgment, beauty, endurance, etc. And finally, the seventh of the 10 sfirot, of the 10 emanations, which is called Malchus, royalty, kingship, regality. Its home base is Asiyah, the world of action. So this is where we're at. Let's continue now. So this is another rhetorical question. If this is the case, Hillel, so they should be limited. They should be b'mispar, a certain number. And what we learned before is va'alamos ein mispar. They don't have a number. They're bligvul, they're infinite. How do the two go together? So he says, Hu she'oir v'achayis b'schalik l'ribu madreges. It is that the energy and the light and the vitality in energy is divided to many levels, based on the capacity of each world. You see, the energy, the force, Hillel, and Avi, and Yoni, and Natzach, and everyone else who's on, which I don't see, and Shmuel. Anyway, the force itself is pure. It's when it comes into a vessel, into a keli, at that time, it identifies with its limitation. And we call this Malakol Almin. This is the godly energy that invests itself in all of these worlds. We're on page 199, guys, fourth line. The chlolus, generally speaking, this energy, this light, this force, the Malakol Almin that pervades all worlds, Hu ha'ora elikis. It's an emanation of godliness. Which comes to be only through the process of contraction, which we call symptom, or plural, symptomim, v'halomis, and concealment. In order for the light, the energy, to be materialized, it needs to go through a process which cools it down, because otherwise it's too overpowering to be beneficial. That process we call tzimtzumim v'halamos. He continues to develop the idea. It's written, Malchuscha, Malchus kol yelomim. We say this twice a day, 3 times a day actually. In Ashrei, Malchuscha, your kingship. Malchus is the kingdom, kol yelomim, of all worlds. The chol yelomim, all worlds, hinisavusam, their creation, whom mebchinas Malchus is from the level of Malchus. What aspect of God, what aspect of Hashem is the animating force that actually makes it possible for there to be a world? It's Malchus. Malchus is that element, that level within each world and each experience that is the mode of making the thing that it animates to be real. The Malchus d'Atzilus, so it says, for example, Malchus of Atzilus, Malchus of the highest world, which is called the world of Atzilus, Hu ha'oir v'achayis, the Gimel Oilamos, it is the light and energy of the 3 worlds, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. Avol, ha'oir hu b'cholusay. The way the light, the way the energy is in Malchus of Atzilus, it's still general, it's b'chlalut. Hainu, P'chinas Malchus d'Atzilus hamachayis Bria Yetzirah Asiyah. It's the energy of Malchus as it's an Atzilus that from there will come forth later Bria Yetzirah Asiyah. So it's the general idea. It's like the general blueprint. An architect makes a blueprint, right? Nothing, without the implementation of that, you have nothing coming into reality. But nevertheless, it needs to begin in the blueprint. If you don't have it in the blueprint, nothing will come. Malchus d'Atzilus is the blueprint for what will come later. So he says, although that's true, hu rak ha'ora bilvad. This energy, this force of Malchus, the way it's in Atzilus, is only an emanation, a reflection. Ha'ora, the Hebrew word ha'ora comes from the word or, but it means a mere reflection. It's rak ha'or bilvad. It doesn't have the entire essence of God in it. V'hainu chitzonius hamalchus. The Rebbe identifies this level of malchus that we say is only a reflection, is what we call in Chassidus the externality, the chitzonius of malchus. Coming after there's been an interruption of a curtain. We learned this earlier, several weeks ago or months ago, I forget. The difference between the parsa, remember, the curtain, and the symptom. The parsa is light. You can see through a curtain. Yes, Hillel, you want to say something?
No, we had it in the last Sefer, yeah.
Yes, correct, in Kunter Somayan. So he says, Chitzonius HaMalchus, the exterior of Malchus is such an experience where the energy, the light, went through a symptom, but it went through a light symptom. It reminds me, in 2001, when I came to Eretz Yisrael to investigate the Dibuk of Damona, and I met with Rabbi Batsri of Yerushalayim, and Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Rabinovitz of Yerushalayim, and Rabbi Shechter, the Breslover leader of Yerushalayim. I met with all three, and I asked them all if they believed this was a real Dibuk. I had studied this topic in the writings of the Arizal, and I was very interested in this to have possibly a real life encounter with a person who was possessed by a dibuk, which ultimately I did, and interviewed her for an hour and 45 minutes with her daughter sitting on the side. I wrote it up in my book called Soul Journeys. So what Rabbi Shechter, Rabbi Yaakov Meir Shechter, the manig, or one of the manigim of the Breslover Hasidim in Meir Sharim, told me that in his opinion it's a dibuk kal. It's a lightweight dibuk. And he said that there's two types of dibukim. There's a dibuk chamor, a strong, heavy-handed dibuk, and there's a light dibuk. We didn't really go further into that, but when I learned here in the Maamar that the parsa is a lightweight contraction on the or. There are different forms of contractions, tzimtzumim. Chassidus says that the parsa, the curtain, is representative of a light type of. It's not obscured completely. And he says shebein atzilus lebriya yitzira v'asiya. Where do we have this type of a separation, of a concealment that's called lightweight between Atzilus and the three other worlds? In other words, to go straight from Atzilus to Bria and etc., it's impossible. Atzilus is from the word etzlo, it's near God. Chassidus brings the pasuk, lo yegur chora, no evil dwells there. And Chassidus says that refers to the world of Atzilus. So if you're talking about a place where there is no evil that's there currently and presently, how can you go from there to a place of Bria, which is the beginnings of creation and which includes the beginning of evil? The jump is too vast, says Kabbalah and Chassidus. You're right. That's why the light, the energy, needs a certain symptom, a certain minimization for it to be effective. What is that called? Parsa. The parsa, analogous to a curtain, is some type of obscurity and concealment and separation, but it's see-through. So in other words, it accomplishes its job of making the light lightweight and not overpowering, so that it can relate to what it creates after that, which is Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya.
I think perhaps the difference is that its symptom is reducing the quantity of the light, but the paragon, the parsa, makes it of a different quality. It's compared to a mushal, that a mushal is not an imshal, it resembles it, but it's not the same as an inshul.
That's one difference. That's correct. But my memory tells me that I believe that Rebbe Rashab, I think in his Maamar of 1904, I think over there, or 1906, he goes even deeper than that. And so what you said is true in the preliminary, initial, basic explanation in Chassidus. But my recollection tells me that he questions that in some of his discourses, and he goes deeper. But yes, what you said is correct. As a general rule, what you said is right.
I remember we did this. I think last year, maybe 2 years ago.
No. Yoni. We need a memory refresher. We did it. We spoke about this as Hillel said, in Kunter Sumayin, not 2 years ago, a month ago. Yeah, and you commented on it. Maybe 2 years ago we did it too. Maybe your memory is better than mine. Anyway, and here we have within this experience 2 levels. Hashpa b'keruf, hashpa b'richuk. He's really now splitting hairs. So let's go along for the ride and put our heads to the paper, to the text. He says there is a type of hashpa, a type of influence which we call kiruf, closeness. The objective of the animation is to be close. And then we have something called hashpa mirachik, an influence, but the objective is to be distant. A simple example. A father's relationship with a child is more the kiruv relationship. A teacher's relationship with a student should be, at least initially, the richuk, the distance. Meaning, you need to first establish who is the teacher and who is the student. And many times when a teacher doesn't establish that, they become buddy-buddy with the teachers, and it becomes disastrous. So there is a kiruv, there is a hashpa. Both are hashpa. Both are influence. Both, the objective of both is to make a difference. But one uses kiruv as its mode of operation, and the other one uses richuk as its mode of operation. So the principal comes into the classroom in a normal, healthy setting. The students rise and are quiet. Still, silence. There's no shalom aleichem, who are you, how are you, what did you do yesterday, what did you do today, and smile. No. It's hashpa. You and the principal are meeting each other in the room with the students, but it's richuk. Whereas with a parent, it's kiruv. Let's continue. Let's see what he says. For Yuvan Zal Derech Moshel, he brings a moshel, a parable. Regarding kingship and the conduct of a country. We see that the conduct of a country is in 2 opposite forces. The primary and the foundation of the government, of kingship, of the country is primarily through exaltation. In other words, Hagba is Nasut. This is the king. This is royalty. And therefore, 3 words. Exalt him, uplift him, pick him up. Meaning, it's the king. From this perspective, the entire conduct of the kingship of the country consists of exaltation of the king and royalty and regality. Uksiv, and it says, Melech b'mishpat, a king with judgment, Yamid Oretz, establishes the earth. The minig amadina hare ikir in yonah hu toivus amadina. The manig amadina, I'm sorry. The leader of a country, his primary role is to improve the country. This requires, this specifically happens when you have judgment, mishpat, in all matters of the country, when you have law and order. As it says, I think they feared him because they saw that there was wisdom, godly wisdom in him to do judgment. How does this, Yoni, how does this judgment take effect? Through expounding, chakiro drisha, questioning, cross-examining, bechol prote in Yoni hanhogo mehochel v'ad kala. In all matters of the country, of conduct of the country, from the beginning to the end, in all aspects. These nasus who havdola dafke. He puts down a very important rule here, which is relevant in many other places in Chassidus. Exaltation, his nasut, is a separation, a distance. It's a havdola. Specifically, through these two aspects. One, that he desires to have a good country, and he desires that people have it well, and he desires to be a good king, which is all a notion of kiruv, of closeness. But the way that's accomplished is through havdolah, through exaltation and separation, knowing that he is the king, and that kingship and royalty is not your party, and you don't eat pizza together and play golf together with a king. It don't happen. This is someone who's special, and this is something that is, so we call this reverence. The Rebbe says, Davka they bezin yoni melu hukim amadina. But nevertheless, through both of these notions do we have a healthy country. This over here ends the moshel. Now comes the moral, the nimshel. This will explain to us regarding the heavenly situation. These are two levels within kingship, within Malchus. Aleph, the first one, it's the level of influence, but given and done in a way of distance. And Yom is the ocean, the river, also refers to Malchus, stands upon them from heaven. It's distant. The second aspect of Malchus, it's the way Malchus is already close to its subjects. As explained elsewhere, the Pchinas Hakeruv, the Malchus, this level of closeness of Malchus, this is as the emanation, the reflection of the Godhead comes already through the process of the curtain, the parsa, so here, this is a very important point. The Rebbe is saying here, what is the objective of the parsa kiruv? And ostensibly we understand what's the objective of the tzimtzum richuk. But he doesn't talk about that right now. He talks about the first part. Look what he says. The Pchinas HaKeruv, the Malchus, that aspect of Malchus that seeks to be close, that aspect of royalty, of kingship, of king, that desires to be close to his subject, requires a parsa, a curtain, a spiritual curtain for it to happen. So what do we understand from this, Hillel? That the tnua, the notion of parsa is kiruv. In other words, you might think, what is the chiddush here? You might think that parsa also, being that it's not a heavyweight separation, it's a lightweight separation, but its objective is to separate. That's what the Rebbe is saying here. No, its objective is not to separate. Its objective is to bring you closer. But in order to bring you closer, you have to be able to meet each other, face each other, and not be overwhelmed. That's why we have the parsa.
Like
Yes?
sunglasses.
What do you mean?
Like the light is too bright, so you put on sunglasses and you can still look.
That's right. That's right. Kitzer.
Rebbe, what's the difference between Symptom and Parsa? Isn't that the same concept?
No. There's a few differences. One is what Shmuel said earlier. Another aspect is that the parsa is a light. A light. It's a curtain, so you can see through. Just Hillel said now the sunglasses. It's an obscurity, but of lightweight. Where Symptom is a heavyweight. It's a total obscurity. Those are some of the basic differences. Here, in this Maamar right here, he adds another nuance. That the objective of parsa is kiruv, and the objective of Symptom is richuk. Remember, right? For a king, Yoni, to be effective, right? He needs to do two things simultaneously. On one hand, he has to be a king, royalty, and be separate and distant than his people, his subjects. And at the very same time, he wants to have a normal country. So he wants them involved. So how do you create the two? So the mashal that we learned before, he said that a good king who knows what he's doing creates the two simultaneous feelings. So the same thing is in the Or Hashem that is given to the world. There's one aspect to it that is, come here, I like you, come, let's be close. And at the same time, there's a feeling is, don't get too close because I'm a king and you're only a subject. And as I said, this Chassidus explains elsewhere are the two ideas, Avinu, Malkeinu. Which, Avinu, our father, is Kiruv. Malkeinu, our king, is Richuk. The relationship of a king and its subject is fear, reverence, distance, for there to be a good relationship. But here he's talking about both aspects in the king itself, in Malchus itself. Kitzer. Yevayer b'yischalkos b'gimel olam is b'riya yitzira asiyah. He explains that when we talk about the division of the three worlds, b'riya yitzira asiyah, and then we speak about v'olam is ein mispur, infinite worlds, heim haribui madreges b'chol olam atzmoi. This refers to the infinite amount of energy within each world itself. This is the oir that pervades the world. So within the oir that pervades the world, there's differences. Malchuscha, malchus kol ilamim. Your kingship is the kingdom of all worlds. The Yasbir, and he explains, hashpa b'keruv, that there's the hashpa, influence that is close, the harochik, and there's an aspect of influence which is distant. And we explained that both are b'malchus in kingship. Al pi moshul, based on the moshul of Hanhogas HaMalucha, the conduct of a country, b'reimemus u'v'mishpat, with exaltation and judgment. Let's continue now, page 200, chapter 9. Unknowm, however, the save of kol almin. So until now, we were talking about memale kol almin, the force and energy that pervades the worlds. What about the energy that we call It surrounds the worlds, and the Alter Rebbe says in chapter, it doesn't mean it surrounds, it's in the world, but its style of animation is in an encompassing way. An example to that is a miracle versus daily life. Daily life is, everything has a routine, everything has an explanation. But when a miracle happens, when it shatters nature, teva, that's an experience, Chassidus says, of Soviv Kol Almin. It's from God, but the style in which God uses to impact us is through a miracle which shatters our convention, our way of thinking, a lifestyle. So Soviv Kol Almin doesn't mean only it's outside somewhere, in a garden or in the green fields of Bet Shemesh Hills. No, Hashem is right inside of your streets. In two ways, and one way is called Soviv Kol Almin. So let's see what he says about Soviv Kol Almin. Unknowm Soviv Kol Almin hu she'einem eslabish ba'olam ha'is. This energy does not invest itself in the worlds. It doesn't permeate and pervade the worlds. Kiyim mechayas ha'olam ha'is, the manner in which it enlivens the worlds is what we call bebchinas makif, in a encompassing way. Hagam shenebar. Hagam, again, Moshe, is indicative of a rhetorical question. Hagam shenebar, and although it is written, it says, as a shamayim v'sa'oretz ani mole, God says, the heavens and the earth I pervade, I fill. So, what do you mean it's soiviv? It says ani mole. God says I fill. Here comes the retort to the rhetorical question. This is what I alluded to earlier. It's explained. Avi, in chapter 48 of Tanya, the Soiviv Soiviv is not to be understood in its literal sense that it encompasses and circles from on high. To be emes who kosov, because in truth, the energy of Soviv is in all parts. Even in this physical world, inside, in, and inside. So if that's the case, why do we call it Soviv, encompassing? It's not here in a manner which its objective is investment, and tfisa means to grasp it and get it. In other words, it's not made in a way that Hashem wants us to relate to it like we relate to waking up in the morning and living our life and throughout the day. Hashem wants us to relate to it in a way that shatters convention. It's a miracle. So when you look at it, you say, this is God, but God is operating in a way that transcends nature. Shmuel, do you have a good mashal for this?
I don't know.
Anyone? Okay, we have to come up with a good practical mashal to explain Soviv Kol Almin. Yes.
Was that the difference is the Soviv is compared to like sunshine. It doesn't differentiate to the places that it reaches into. It just shines all over with its force.
Right. Okay, but we benefit from the sun, right?
Sure.
That's the vart. The vart is, that's the Alter Rebbe says. It's not that it's Soivu Makiv Milmaila. No, the sun is here. But the manner in which it's here is not personal. That's the difference. Not personal. Let's continue. The Achai is the Mamar Kol Almin, and now he goes back and forth. Yodi, pay attention here. This is intricate stuff here. The Achai is the Mamar Kol Almin, the energy of Mamar Kol Almin, the light that pervades the world. It's an energy that is invested and grasped by the world. In other words, nature relates to it. Conversely, it's here, but in a way that nature does not relate to it. Ukumesheneman, as it says, Ki nizgav shmoi, for God's name is exalted, levadai, to himself. The shmoi hu nizgav u'merayman. Hashem's name is exalted and uplifted. Shu b'bchinas makif bilvad. It is only in a way of makif. We know about God's name, right? Let's say the name of a king is Al-Melech. We know that, but if you haven't seen the king and you haven't seen what he does and you don't understand the king, all you know is the king of the country. It's makif. He said earlier in the Maamar that our faith, the faith of all ye Jews, who she'oir ein sof baruch hu mechaya olam is babeis madreigas a save kol almin malo kol almin. We believe that not only is God in nature, God is in the supernatural. I'll put it in the words in the Maamar, Avi. Not only is Hashem in Male Kol Almin, Hashem is also in Seiv Kol Almin. And now the Rebbe says, V'ikir Emunah, and the primary belief, our primary Emunah, is not in Male, but rather in Seiv Kol Almin. Why? The Mamale Kol Almim Mamale Kol Almim is the energy, is the animation that is understood. And it's like we see it, right? You don't eat, you're hungry. You don't sleep, you're tired. Mamale Kol Almim is tit for tat. You don't work, you don't have money, you don't have parnasa. Mamale is normal nature. So, do we need faith for that? Or it's like we see it? We see it. The Rebbe quotes the verse, from my flesh I perceive godliness. Kol Adam, and he says in Yiddish, every man is von sich konner verstehen. He can understand from himself wie das is in Olam, how it is in the world. That's what I told you. You don't eat, you don't sleep. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to have belief and emunah for this. It's a phenomenon, a natural phenomenon that you can relate to. Just as man feels in himself that he has a life force that gives him life, he sees his body is alive in the morning. It's not only that the body, okay, we're going to stop here because I have to explain this more. We'll stop here. We're in the middle of explaining the difference between Amala and Seiviv, and his point being that the primary Emunah is in Seiviv Kol Almin. I'll talk more about that in Shem tomorrow. Have a good day, everyone. Sei gesund. Shalom. Bye. Bye-bye. Take care.